Officials say the fire that flared up in Simonstown and Glencairn vegetation is under control. Firefighters are monitoring hotspots for flare-ups in a blaze that started on Tuesday. Now, no homes or properties have been destroyed and no people have been caught in the fire. Sustainability and conservation journalist Kristin Engel joins us now to talk about what made the runaway fires around Simonstown so severe. Kristin, a pleasure to have you on the program this afternoon. Now, given the climate change projections for Cape Town with longer, warmer and even drier summers, how much of a role did climate change play in the recent fires, and how might these conditions evolve in the future?
So, thanks. I'm very happy to be here. And like you mentioned, the climate change projections for Cape Town, it's expected to get Cape Town will be experiencing generally worsening fire weather conditions. So I think it's definitely worth trying to understand what made these fires so severe, and the conditions that a more dangerous fire could likely occur in the same place. So yeah, if we can just get right into it. So this was a wind-driven fire, and it was ignited amidst extreme weather conditions with high temperatures, low humidity, and a robust southeasterly wind. And then these factors combined with the arid vegetation in the area basically provided an optimal setting for the rapid spread of such a fire on the high fire index. And yeah, so that's the escalation in wind speed, along with consistent shifts in direction, intensified the spread of the fire in multiple areas, and that's basically what we saw unfold over the last week. So when we're speaking about climate change, so I'm sure everyone who's living in Cape Town will know that we've been experiencing drier weather conditions, periodically reduced rainfall over time. That's consistent with the climate projections for Cape Town. However, speaking to some of the experts during the past week, climate change was definitely at play, but it wasn't too strongly at play with the fires of last week. And this was largely because we had a very wet winter, an extremely wet September. October was also very dry, and November was one of the warmest on record for Cape Town. And this December, it's not been especially warm or dry compared to previous years, but it has been extremely windy. And the fires around Simonstown, they're not unusual, but these fires were supposed to be burning over a much larger area of natural vegetation that might have been mismanaged or just got out of control over the past few years, and that essentially led to the severity and the quick spread of the fire.
Kristin, I want to touch a bit more about the aspect of the wind here. I mean, the wind has been highlighted as a significant complicating factor in firefighting efforts there. Can you elaborate on how wind patterns, especially the strong southern easterly winds, have actually contributed to the rapid spread of this fire?
Yeah, so I think the wind was definitely the biggest opposition in containing and containing the fire and in the firefighting efforts to mitigate the fire. And it's actually, I think if we look back at the Devil's Peak fire, the Devil's Peak UCT fire of April 2021, we can see a lot of similarities between that extreme fire and what occurred this week. So they both occurred under extreme fire weather conditions with a northwesterly wind at the end of with a northwesterly wind, yeah. And I think the main thing to take away is that they occurred in a region with heavily invaded vegetation and transformed land that drove the extreme fire behavior that was witnessed. So these were both wildland urban interface fires, which means basically occur in areas where human development is occurring at the same time as the natural environment. And they both burned in areas that would naturally be fynbos areas, so dense scrub, heavily infested with flammable alien vegetation, appears to grow in abundance over certain parts of Simonstown, which is likely to pose a much greater risk to people and structures in the future. under even more extreme fire weather conditions, which could be what we are looking at in the coming week with the weather warnings that are being released by the South African Weather Service.
Let's speak more to your last point. How does the type of vegetation in the Cape Town area, particularly like you've mentioned, the fynbos, how has this contributed to the fire risk? And what role does controlled burning play in managing this risk?
It's an extremely important role. I think what people should take away from this fire is that we need to ensure that the areas where we stay, especially wildland urban interface areas, that the correct fire management protocols and measures are put in place throughout the year, that they are being upheld, because otherwise we can see even worse runaway fires. And what would be surprising is that a lot of the time these fires are ignited by humans. So just the humans interacting with nature, with climate change exacerbating some negative impacts is something that we should definitely be more focused on. In
the context of the Simonstown fire, how effective were local evacuation plans, and what proactive measures did residents take to minimize the impact of their safety and property as well?
I think the locals were very, very aware of the situation that could have been likely to unfold. Or at least the residents had lived in those areas for years. Like they'd been seeing the vegetation build up. They'd been seeing the fire mitigation and management methods. And I think that evacuations in this instance were very, very successful. I think this morning we heard that all people who had been evacuated have been returned to their homes, not looking at major loss of property or lives, which is a miracle in itself, and is definitely thanks to the hard work of the firefighting efforts. But I think locals played a very, very important role in this instance in mitigating the loss to property and to lives. I think there was definitely a lot of concern and anxiousness and nerves about the situation with the evacuations as is normal in the situation. But I think that hopefully we'll be able to learn from this scenario and react faster and with more care in the future.
It's also been mentioned that 2023 is considered the worst fire season globally. How does this align with the patterns that have been observed in other parts of the world? And are there commonalities in the factors leading to more intense and frequent fires?
Yes, definitely. That's a big one. So this is expected to be the worst fire season in South Africa in 8 years alone, and definitely the worst that we've seen around the globe so far, with the peak fire seasons in the global north that happened over the past few months during the year. I think that the situation in South Africa is not the same as the fires that were triggered in Canada and Australia and the rest of those countries. But we need to be cognizant of the link between the global situation when it comes to the fire season. Already, even before this fire season, South Africa had already dealt with an unprecedented amount of winter fires. This fire season is set to be the most severe. So I think during the winter months, there was already a record fire season in the northern part of the country. Provinces like the northwest, which typically burn about 200,000 hectares, burnt about 1.2 million hectares, with 4 fire-related deaths in that province. Don't underestimate the severity of the fire season this year.
Kristin, thank you very much for your time as we conclude this insightful discussion with Kristin Engel. It's quite evident that recent wildfires at Cape Town region are a complex interplay of natural factors, human activities, as we've heard, and the broader impacts of climate change there. And she was giving us some insight into some of the contributing factors there.